Considered some of the best kaiju films, the Heisei Gamera films have been highly praised by multiple people over the years, with statements such as, when a turtle was better than Godzilla, and how Gamera beat Godzilla at his own game. Years ago I believed this, until I actually bought the films and watched them. And let's just say I don't hold those opinions anymore. Today I'm going to go into some of the flaws I see in these films, as well as certain problems I have with the series. Starting things off is the progression of these films. In Guardian of the Universe, the story seems to be everywhere. Certain characters are shown in one place, but the next time you see them they are somewhere completely different, without any explanation. This is also done in Gamera Attack of Legion, with the film going from one thing to another without any context. One such example is the military fighting the Legion crabs. Right as they are about to fire upon the monster, it cuts to something else, never to be seen again. This is done multiple times in the film, and speaks volume to how much this film's story is all over the place. Gamera 3 does not have this problem as bad, as its progression is done well enough to know what is going on in the film. The next flaw has to do with illogical decisions made by the characters in these films. In Guardian of the Universe, Yoshinara, a marine officer, decides to follow around the main characters as an observer, due to a problem that happened on his ship. He barely has any motivation for literally following everyone around, except for the film to have a familiar character whenever they need someone to say a random comment about Gamera. In Gamera 2, Midori for some reason advises military leaders, despite her role in this film never being completely explained, nor is it explained what she does or who she is. At one point they find out that the Legion's plant would explode. She says that she decides to stay there because they couldn't possibly escape in time. This makes no sense, and is proven wrong when 6 minutes go by without an explosion. They easily could have made it more than 4 miles away in that time. Something similar to this is done in Gamera Revenge of Iris. The humans go to a populated train station, despite a huge monster chasing them. After they find out that it's closed, for some reason the human characters stand there for more than 1/3 of the movie, literally waiting for the monster to get there and destroy them all. Literally 20 minutes of the film is taken up by the human characters standing at the train station and talking about nonsense, while Iris walks towards them, causing some of them to die in result. This could have easily been avoided by a transportation vehicle called a car. A criticism of the Heisei Godzilla films is that the human characters just stand there watching the fight. Well, the first thing is that the humans actually are involved in stopping the monsters in almost every Heisei Godzilla film. And the second thing is that they didn't stand in the same spot for 20 minutes, talking about philosophy, while a monster is right there waiting to destroy them. Something else in Gamera Guardian of the Universe is that the humans don't ask questions about the monsters or their actions. They don't wonder how these monsters can shoot lasers or fire and try to use this against them. Unlike the Heisei Godzilla films or even the Showa Godzilla films, like an example being Terror of Mechagodzilla, after finding out Titanosaurus is sensitive to certain frequencies, they use this to their advantage, compared to Guardian of the Universe where the humans completely forget about it and move on with the story. This is done multiple times, with Gamera shooting fire, digging underground, and literally flying, as well as there being no question on how Giles can shoot a light beam that produces sound waves powerful enough to have an effect on physical objects. The most the humans give is a surprised face. Then after the dust settles, they act like it's just an average Tuesday. This makes zero sense, especially with the main character being a scientist, which leads to my next point. The bird scientist in Gamera Guardian of the Universe is incredibly confusing. She makes statements about Giles that are either proven untrue, or sometimes instantly contradicted, such as her claim about Giles being nocturnal, only for Giles to literally show up during the day 5 seconds after she says this. And the same thing goes for her claim about Giles having a weakness to light, just because she flashed a camera lens in its face. This is proven completely false when Giles literally builds a nest on the tallest thing in the area, and fights Gamera with zero problem during the daytime. These claims, although proven false, were never talked about again, making it very confusing for the audience. The next flaw I think personally makes these films unwatchable for me. In order to understand the story, it requires the audience to assume a lot, partly due to my previous points about things having no explanation, like in Gamera 3. One of my main problems with Gamera 3 is the human story. At first, Ayana's family is introduced, with it looking like the film will be focusing on their relationship. But suddenly, without explanation in the film, Ayana's adopted family is killed by Iris. This is only shown through a short flashback at the end of the film, but isn't brought up anywhere in the actual film by any of the characters. And instead of the family relationship being built on, This is instead replaced with Diana staring at nothing, while other characters talk about random stuff. Other things not explained well, or not at all, is the necklace which somehow has a connection between Gamera and Asagi. But again, this is not explained or built upon in the films. And the main character for Gamera 1 and 3 don't make up for the problems in these films, with Asagi being introduced as a lively character that adds a lot to the story. But after she has a connection to Gamera, she becomes lifeless and has nothing to give to the story. The same thing goes for Ayana in Gamera Revenge of Iris. Most of her screen time is made up of her having a blank expression, and her character isn't even well written, with her wanting revenge for Gamera accidentally destroying her family, but at the same time she doesn't bat an eye when Iris kills individual people, including her adopted family, and then suddenly at the end of the film, she changes her mind, which leads to Gamera's character. Gamera is made out to be the protector of Earth, but at the same time he is causing its destruction. Due to his absorption of something called mana, which again isn't well explained, nor does it make sense, but due to Gamera absorbing this mana because of an ever-changing environment, it led to Legion coming to Japan, as well as creating more Gaios. So how does Gamera solve this problem? He absorbs more mana, which leads to more destruction of human lives and cities, creating an endless cycle getting worse as time goes on. But the film makes Gamera seem good at the end of the series, with him caring so much about the girl that he cuts off his own arm to rescue her. Now, if you think about that, that doesn't really make sense. First of all, Iris' back was to Gamera, meaning Gamera is able to sense where people are, even if he doesn't see them. Which also means Gamera knew what he was doing when he shot through a building full of people, and stepped on helpless bystanders. Now, this along with Gamera being the sole reasons why monsters are created, and led to Japan, makes Gamera more of a villain than Godzilla ever was. Now let's talk about the camera angles in these films. These films basically use two types of angles. Extremely low angles, having something block the monsters all the time, and extremely close shots. These angles make it incredibly hard to see what is going on in the fights. While some are better than others, most of the shots make it impossible to see the fight, and have no purpose other than hide what is going on. The close-ups are very disorienting, with it being hard to see what is going on, with scenes like Gamera vs. Iris Sky Battle literally being unwatchable. These angles are done to hide the fact that there is nothing going on in the fight. The fight's mostly consisting of Gamera pushing a monster until he gets stabbed. Unlike the Heisei Godzilla films or even the Showa Gamera films, they don't utilize any of Gamera's powers. Literally, most of the fights could have ended by Gamera shooting a fireball at close range. Instead, they choose to have the monsters do nothing, while hiding behind angles that make you assume something is actually occurring. The models in the Heisei Gamera films are the main thing people talk about when comparing the Heisei Godzilla and Heisei Gamera films. The models are highly detailed and look realistic. If Gamera was supposed to be 40 meters tall, and not 80 meters tall like the film says, Gamera is consistently shown throughout the three films to not be much taller than 10 stories tall, and his design having a huge head and wide body doesn't help make him look giant. Heisei Gamera is supposed to be 80 meters tall, the same height as Godzilla in 1984, and almost twice the size of Showa Godzilla. The miniatures at one point have Gaios' whole head fit inside a train car. Meanwhile, a train car easily fits in Godzilla 1984's hand, and a whole train car fits inside Gojira's mouth, with Gojira being 50 meters tall. This lack of proper scaling is shown throughout the films, but is blatantly obvious in Gamera Guardian of the Universe, with Gaios' head fitting in one story of a building, showing chairs and office equipment be half as tall as his head. And a scene such as the two shots showing a human be the size of Gamera's hand are so bad that even the Showa Gamera films did that better. And this goes for how big Gamera looks overall. In the original 1965 film, Gamera looks giant, despite him only being 60 meters tall, with even the edits in the Heisei Gamera films making him look incredibly small. Comparing them to the Heisei Godzilla edits shows how small they made Gamera look. One thing I consistently hear used to say the Heisei Gamera films are better than the Heisei Godzilla films is the budget. While converting for inflation, Gamera Guardian of the Universe had 4 times the budget than the original Gamera film. Yet the original still properly scales Gamera to humans and buildings, with them also not trying to hide the monsters with low angles or close angles not really showing much of anything. Which leads to my main problem with these films. The fact that they make Gamera himself worse than his Showa version in almost every way. In the original Gamera film, nothing could stop Gamera. From electricity, the heat of a nuclear power plant, tank fire, missiles, and even a nuclear bomb. In the Heisei era, Gamera is knocked out by conventional weaponry, such as missiles and tank fire. And monsters like Legion had its arms cut off by even smaller missiles, making Gamera's attacks feel even weaker than an average missile. It's so bad that in trying to copy the Godzilla vs. Destroya scene, they had the Legion crabs crawl over Gamera, making him bleed and knocking him out. The only difference from the Destroya scene is that Godzilla was knocked down from multiple monsters that were able to handle tank fire, military attacks, and was able to even beat a smaller version of Godzilla, that being Godzilla Jr. The same monsters that knocked Gamera out can individually be killed by 9 bullets from a handgun. Not even Destroya's second form was that weak. But even just imagining these small Destroyas being able to knock Godzilla out, or make him bleed, is ridiculous just to say the least. Now, this isn't even mentioning the underutilization of Gamera's other abilities. In the Showa era, flight is used as one of Gamera's main advantages, with him using it creatively to defeat the monsters. He uses his fire close up when the monsters can't run away, and he thinks before he attacks. That is literally the opposite of Heisei Gamera. In the Heisei Gamera films, he tries to shoot his fire far away from the monster. He runs headfirst into the monster, grabbing onto them, until eventually he gets stabbed or knocked down. And this is done in every single film. And when Heisei Gamera is presented with the opportunity to use his fire breath, he makes the dumbest decisions. Like in Revenge of Iris, after his hand was impaled by Iris, he just stood there for literally 2 minutes, and then after all that time, he decided the best decision would be to cut off his arm. Literally every other option was better than the one he chose. Good examples being from Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Final Wars. Imagine if Godzilla was as intelligent as Heisei Gamera. When he was impaled by Biollante, he would have cut off his own hand, instead of literally ripping out the thing that stabbed him. Now, one of the main things I don't like from Heisei Gamera is the fact that they don't tuck in his arms like the old Gamera, or like real turtles. Instead, they shoot smoke everywhere so that you can't see what's happening, and then they cut to a scene of him flying. This is one of the things I like least in the Heisei Gamera films. The original was creative, having the monster suit look like an actual turtle tucking into its shell, where this one they just literally cut to a different scene after having a smokescreen effect. And that's about it for all my points. Overall, this video was just to point out things I haven't seen anyone talk about, due to certain people criticizing the Heisei Godzilla films, while praising the Heisei Gamera films without mentioning most of the major flaws. Despite this video being mostly negative, there are many things that the Heisei Gamera films did better than the Heisei Godzilla films, mainly with its special effects and quality of models. But these are just my thoughts on the films. I encourage you to look into the films yourself and come to your own conclusion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.